notes that we're going to go over. We do have this program set up as a Zoom meeting, so feel free to turn your videos on. You can leave yourself off of mute if you'd like to talk and ask questions. Jen or I might mute you if we get some weird background noise every once in a while, but please feel free. We want you to interact with us, and you can go ahead and we'll stop and answer your questions. And I know Dr. Walaszek has worked hard to make today's program where we're going to be interacting and spending some time talking together. So if you do have questions and you don't feel like maybe raising your hand and asking it, please go ahead and put it in the chat. Jen will be monitoring the chat, so we'll make sure we get those questions answered. So I think from there, I'll go ahead and have Jen introduce Dr. Walaszek.
Wonderful, thanks, Bonnie. So today we have Dr. Art Walaszek with us. Dr. Walaszek is Vice Chair for Education and Faculty Development and Director of Psychiatry Residency Training at the University of Wisconsin Department of Psychiatry. He is co-leader of the Outreach, Recruitment, and Engagement Core at the Wisconsin Alzheimer's Disease Research Center and directs the public health pillar of the Wisconsin Alzheimer's Institute. Dr. Walasek's mission is to improve the care of people with Alzheimer's disease through education of medical students, residents, and clinicians in practice. He has a specific focus on the assessment and management of behavioral and psychological symptoms of dementia, which can be disabling and dangerous for both patients and their caregivers. So Dr. Walaszek, thank you so much for the gift of your time and your talents and your expertise. We are very excited to have you with us today, and I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that very gracious introduction, and especially thank you for having this topic today and for inviting me to speak about it. I'll just start with a disclosure. I am not an expert in self-care. I think we've all been learning as we go about how to thrive and how to do well despite all the challenges of the pandemic. I think it's safe to say that no one on the Zoom was around for the last pandemic in 1918 and 19. We've all had to kind of figure this out on our own, how to be well despite all the challenges. So we've already seen in the chat lots of wonderful ideas from folks about what you all have been doing to promote your self-care. So I enter this space as sort of a learner like all of you, and would love to hear from you what you have found to be helpful. And so to that end, we will try to make this as engaging and interactive as possible. I may not be able to see the chat myself as I present, so Jennifer, if you could just, as a question or comment or whatever comes up, if you could just let me know, I can address it on the fly. We have the luxury of a lot of time here, so we can make this quite interactive. And thank you to Bonnie for being such a key coordinator here, and to Nate. And I appreciated the Dementia Matters shout out, because guess what I was doing last night as I was preparing for this? I was listening to a Dementia Matters podcast. I was like, what's the latest on exercise and dementia? So I went back to Nate's interview of Dr. Gaitan and listened to that. And that clued me into like, aha, this is where I should be looking for the very latest. So Nate, thank you for having such a tremendous resource available to all of us. You are all sharing in the chat about things that you've been doing for your self-care. So I'm going to share what I've found most helpful, and that is bicycling. I've enjoyed bicycling all my life. I've never really done it in any sort of serious way, but decided with the start of the pandemic that I would lose my mind if I couldn't find some regular way to be active. And I pretty much hate most exercise. Just so that's another disclosure. I'm going to be talking to you about the importance of exercise, but mostly can't stand exercise with a couple of exceptions. And bicycling is one of those exceptions. Bicycling is a great social activity. My wife got an e-bike last year, and that really transformed our ability to ride together. We're at slightly different sort of ability levels in terms of riding. But she easily surpasses me with her e-bike. In fact, on this ride, I remember this ride well. We rode out to Belleville and back, and like I was struggling to keep up with her on the way back. So the e-bike has been a tremendous enabler of the two of us to be able to go out on these wonderful bike rides around Wisconsin. There's an incredible bicycling system and network throughout Madison and the rest of Wisconsin. So I've really enjoyed that. So I just wanted to share kind of what personally I found to be most helpful in terms of self-care activities. So I'll just do it. Oh, go ahead, please. Yeah.
Can somebody tell me how to turn off record? Because I accidentally hit record, and so I'm recording this and I don't know how to turn it off.
I don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry.
We are recording this session though, and so I'm not sure if you need to do anything.
Okay.
You don't need to do anything, Beth. We're recording it so that it can go onto the website for future use. So you don't have to do anything.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Right. Yep. Good question.
Thanks for asking.
Mhm.
Here's just an outline, just a smattering of ideas about ways that we can promote our self-care and well-being. So in brainstorming with Bonnie and Jen about this, the kind of list that we came up with was diet, exercise, sleep. I was trying to figure out how to put alcohol, tobacco, and substances, because that's a thing to do less of, whereas the rest of this is stuff to do more of. So just to be clear, I'm not recommending alcohol, tobacco, and substances as ways to promote self-care, but things to avoid to promote self-care. And then other things we do want to do more of are social activities, mindfulness, and meaning and purpose, finding meaning and purpose. So those are kind of the broad categories I came up with. If other folks have other topics sort of in this sort of general, what are the high level categories of self-care? Please, feel free to put them in the chat or just unmute and bring them up. Now, I especially love the piano idea. I hadn't thought about that as sort of, learn a new skill essentially as a promoting self-care and well-being. So would anyone like to add any other topics to kind of this high level overview? More laughter and creative engagement. I love that. Yes. Laughter. Excellent. Creativity. Good. Okay. Well, along the way, if I'm missing major categories of promoting self-care and well-being, please feel free to add that. So I'm going to start with diet. And lo and behold, as I was preparing this, like a day or two ago, I got something from the Wisconsin Alzheimer's Disease Research Center about the MIND diet. We're like, that's perfect. I should include that in here. Diet is a critical determinant of our physical health, of our mental health, and of our cognitive health. And this will be a theme for today. I'm going to go back and forth a little bit when I talk about like what we know about the benefits, from cognitive benefits to mental health benefits to physical benefits, because a lot of these things overlap. And so something that's good for your memory may also be good for your mood, may also be good for your sleep, may also be good for your heart, which is not surprising. We have one body that is all interconnected. And so it's not surprising that things that benefit one aspect of our lives may benefit another aspect. And this is almost certainly true of diet as well. So I'll just share a little bit here. folks may already be familiar with this, but if not, the idea behind the MIND diet. So the MIND diet is the combination of the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet, which is a low sodium diet. And the basic premise of the Mediterranean diet is to eat more fish and poultry and less red meat, and use olive oil and more fresh fruits and vegetables and so on. And then the DASH, the D part of it, adds the low salt component. So it isn't necessarily a prescriptive diet in terms of you must eat such and such and this amount, and you can never eat X. Rather, it's choose more of the stuff in the left-hand column and less of the stuff in the right-hand column. So more green leafy vegetables, especially, but also other vegetables, more nuts and berries, like you see in those luscious strawberries and blueberries at the upper left, more beans, more whole grains, more fish and poultry. So there's that beautiful salmon at the upper right that's crusted with black pepper. And olive oil as your cooking oil, as opposed to lard or margarine or butter. And then less of the things on the right, less red meat, less butter and margarine, less cheese, unfortunately for us Wisconsinites, less pastries and sweets, and less fried or fast food. So the story behind the MIND diet is that this is being actively studied as an approach to improve cognition, improve memory. These sorts of diets may also have benefits with respect to mood. So this is a little tricky to study. Often a high quality diet is associated with other things like having lots of money or having lots of education and or living in wealthy areas. And conversely, having a poor diet is associated with living in poor neighborhoods that are grocery store deserts and that have lots of environmental toxins. And so it can be really hard to disentangle some of these things. But in general, it seems like a diet that leans more heavily on the omega-3 side of things versus omega-6. Omega-3 is found in fish and various other things, is probably generally better for mood as well as for cognition. It's been tricky also with supplements, and I tend to be more of a kind of lumper rather than a splitter. So thinking about like, what is all the food I take in and is it healthy or not versus, oh, I'm going to take this particular supplement and that's going to make me healthy. In general, I'm personally sort of fairly skeptical about, oh yes, there's one micronutrient that's going to improve our mood or improve our cognition. I think it's really the totality of our diet. And that's why I like things like the MIND diet is really just simplifying things. Eat more of this, eat less of that, rather than take this supplement and that supplement and the latest fad and all that, which usually almost never do those things actually pan out in the long run. And that's been true, like even just with omega-3 fatty acid supplements. Early on, there were some studies that maybe they might help with treatment of depression. But if you really kind of look at it with a critical eye, those studies aren't super great quality. And so it's hard to say that like any one supplement is going to be significantly helpful for mood or for cognition, as opposed to just the overall diet in general and the quality of the diet. And you may see a theme here, some more salmon on the left. I love salmon, and I'll admit it's expensive. It's not the cheapest way to get omega-3 into your diet, but salmon once a week, baked or grilled instead of fried, would be a nice healthy supplement. I did find, I can put this in the chat later, I was looking for just like very simple salmon recipe. I mean, salmon is hard to screw up. So salmon, a little bit of olive oil, a little bit of lemon juice, maybe some dill, and stick it in the oven or grill it. And that's it. That's really all you need. Salmon is so flavorful and rich on its own. And beautifully filled with omega-3 fatty acids. This particular diet has a fair amount of salt. In fact, or this recipe rather, in fact, it says sprinkle generously with salt. So if you do look at this diet, don't sprinkle, or this recipe, don't sprinkle generously with salt, sort of limit the salt. It actually doesn't need a lot of salt because salmon is so flavorful, and you can use pepper or dill as the seasoning instead. So with respect to food, and kind of what I do personally for self-care, just simple recipes like baking salmon. So I'll be curious. I imagine we have some folks who love to eat and love to cook, and I'm curious, either in the chat or just unmute yourself. What are things that you've enjoyed over the last year or two during the pandemic? Maybe new foods or new recipes that you've tried, or maybe just an old favorite that will kind of meet some of those mind criteria of more fish and poultry, olive oil, fruits and vegetables, less red meat, less fried food, less cheese. What are your favorite dishes? Homemade sushi. Wow. I've never done that. Charlotte, do you want to share any about sort of what goes into homemade sushi?
Sure, yeah. I don't honestly know too much. I've only tried it once recently, but you just need sushi rice and then like sushi grade salmon and then whatever veggies you want to put in. And I think I put like cucumber and carrot or something like that. And then just the seaweed. And then I bought a little kit off Amazon to do the whole like bamboo roll and everything. And it was super fun. It took like 2 hours. So it was kind of like a nice break because the rice takes a while to cook, but it was really good and fun.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I love eating sushi for sure, but haven't tried to make it myself. It is, one interesting thing about learning to prepare a new dish is there's the possibility of there being sort of an interpersonal and social component. That's a thing we'll talk about repeatedly. I know my younger daughter, Lucy, and I have loved to cook together over the years, and we have some certain traditions like, not terribly healthy, but making the cranberry sauce for Thanksgiving. That's our big tradition. We've cooked a number of other things together over the years. So there's a nice potential for social component. And with things opening up again, cooking classes and so on could be a possibility. So, okay, other great comments here. Kathy, what does eating the rainbow mean? I have not heard that phrase before. What does it mean to eat the rainbow?
Thank you. Eating the rainbow is all of your colorful fruits and vegetables. So your reds, your oranges, your yellows, your greens. The more colorful, the better.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
I love that idea. And, so with food, to find food appetizing, we normally think of taste, and very closely linked to taste is smell, but visual is very, very important as well. That's why people get paid millions of dollars to market food, to make that, that sandwich or that's whatever look beautiful on television. And then on your plate, that the visual appearance is really important as well. So I love that idea of eating the rainbow. I see fish tacos on here. Molly loves salmon and other fish as well. Nate, come on. But at least you're being honest. Thank you. I appreciate it. I do love cheese curds too. Let's see. Molly made homemade sushi as well. Fish tacos, sweet potatoes. Molly, do you want to say anything about sweet potatoes? Do you have a favorite sweet potato recipe?
I love I love sweet potato casserole. There's a lot of butter and sugar in that, however. So I try to just have a good roasted sweet potato on the side. Having it with some cinnamon is actually really good. Yeah, and I just kind of sometimes have it with a little bit of olive oil, and that's enough. It's very delicious.
Yeah. Thank you, Molly. Thanks for sharing. Alexander brought up quinoa salad with grapes, feta, and lots of leafy greens. That sounds, how close are we to lunch? 90 minutes yet, darn. This is funny. Maybe I should have put this last rather than first. And James wrote, have enjoyed sharing recipes with friends. One winner was baked pecan crusted salmon. Yum. Got some nuts in there as well. Also made pandemic chicken pot pie. Oh, and so what makes a chicken pot pie a pandemic chicken pot pie, James?
I hope it isn't that the chicken had the flu.
Well, James, at some point, if you want to unmute or just put it in the chat, let us, I'm curious what a pandemic chicken pot pie is. Sounds good. And then vegan. Well, so that actually, I haven't brought that up, but certainly there's been a huge movement towards vegetarian and vegan eating. And I have to say the vegan like meat replacements have gotten very, very good over the years. My older daughter, Maddie, and I went to New York a couple of years ago. She was looking at colleges there. Every restaurant we went to was vegetarian and vegan. And we sort of did that intentionally. She's vegetarian and it was incredible. Like we went to this restaurant twice because the vegetarian or the vegan burger was so good there. It was, I wouldn't say indistinguishable, but very close to animal-based products. So that the sort of plant-based meat-like alternatives are really getting quite good. I've had bacon that's vegan, that's very good. So lots of great alternatives. James made it while dancing on the radio on WPR Saturday night. Just found the recipe during the pandemic, so it stuck. That's great. Thank you, James. Thanks for sharing that.
I'm glad to hear it wasn't the flu. One of the things I was gonna say is I always needed a way to get extra leafy greens in, and I don't mind eating them, but I just forget about it, or like the one salad a day before dinner with them isn't always enough. So after our session with Dr. Michelle Braun last June, she talked about eating this smoothie that was packed with all this stuff in the morning. So I started doing that in the last couple of months, and I just shoved that spinach in the bottom and then all the berries and all of that. And it's like my little boost of nutrients, little flaxseed in there, but I always feel really good. Like, look, and I just drank all this awesome stuff for my body.
That's awesome. Oops, sorry, I clicked accidentally. Yeah, no, that's such a great point. What a creative solution to get a lot of great nutrients in. And Amy also just went to New York and is vegetarian and had a similar experience. That's great. Good. Well, so let me just kind of summarize the healthy eating part of this. So, the benefits are possibly there are good cognitive benefits to a healthy diet. I strongly believe there are important mood benefits to a healthy diet. And there's a learning component. So many of you talked about new recipes that you learned, new things that you tried. So learning, training your brain, staying cognitively active is important. There's a sense of mastery and accomplishment. So when you've created something new, I'll admit, I'm not a huge fan of cooking. I'm a huge fan of the product of the cooking. So I like that I have made this thing that is delicious and that I'm enjoying and other people are enjoying. And then there's the social aspect too, the either together preparing or learning how to prepare a dish. And of course, the sharing of food, that is a tradition as old as humanity itself. Gathering around a fire and sharing a meal is a communal activity, and so critical for well-being. Okay, I think that's all I'll say on diet and eating. So thank you all for the terrific suggestions. I'm going to switch over to exercise a little bit, and this is where I turn to Nate's podcast to brush myself up on kind of the latest understanding of exercise and cognition, and also share with you what we know about exercise and mental health. So these are the CDC guidelines for exercise. So they recommend moderate intensity aerobic activity for 150 minutes a week. And on the next slide, I'll have kind of what specifically that means and some examples of that. So anything that gets your heart beating faster counts. and muscle strengthening activities at least 2 days a week. And so 2 slides from now, I will share what specifically that means. So again, the combo of 150 minutes a week of getting your heart rate up, cardio, and then 2 days a week of some sort of muscle strengthening activities. So here's, again, from the CDC website, moderate intensity aerobic exercise is defined as working hard enough to raise your heart rate and break a sweat. And so the examples they gave are walking fast, doing water aerobics, riding a bike, my favorite, on level ground or with few hills, playing doubles tennis, which is probably a good way to really get your heart rate up, and pushing a lawnmower. And of course, there could be plenty of other examples of exercise that gets your heart rate up. And again, 150 minutes a week altogether. So that could be 5 days of 30 minutes at a time, or 3 days of 50 minutes at a time, but something that adds up to 150 minutes a week. And then strengthening. So to gain health benefits, you need to do muscle strengthening activities to the point where it's hard for you to do another repetition without help. And the examples they gave are lifting weights, working with resistance bands, so probably 2 of the most popular things. Things that don't require any equipment are doing exercises that use your body for the resistance, like push-ups or sit-ups. I had never heard of heavy gardening before, so I'm not sure what heavy gardening means exactly, but it sounds like it's one where you've got to dig and shovel and use your muscles in other ways. And then some forms of yoga also involve muscle strengthening. So those are the guidelines and some specific recommendations. Here's just kind of what we know about the mood effects of exercise. So again, it's a bit difficult to study, but as best as we can tell, exercise can have a variety of benefits in terms of mood. I already introduced the concept of kind of mastery when we were talking about preparing a meal. Similarly, exercise can give you that sense of mastery or self-efficacy. Mastery meaning I've accomplished something, and self-efficacy is, I'm in control of my life. I am the agent of my own decision making, and I've decided to go for a bike ride or to do some push-ups or to do heavy gardening, and now I've done it and I feel good about myself. So there's a psychological aspect to exercise. There's also, I don't have it on here, but it just occurs to me that as best as we can tell, there's within the brain, exercise releases endorphins. So those are kind of natural opiates, your body's own opiates. And that may actually be part of some of the reward, some of the good feeling that you get with exercise. So that's a psychophysiologic benefit of exercise. In people over 65, there's pretty decent evidence. It's hard to do studies in this area, but there's pretty decent evidence that moderate to vigorous exercise can treat depression. So if someone has symptoms of depression, exercise can actually be helpful. And then there's actually been some work on what if you gave people an antidepressant and exercise, or just one or the other, or neither, what would that look like? And it turns out exercise plus antidepressant can be a good combination. The way I think about it is, I'm not recommending people go on antidepressants necessarily, but if someone is on an antidepressant, adding exercise to that can actually boost the effect of the antidepressant. So that can better treat depression, can better treat anxiety. So there's pretty good evidence that there are good mood effects from exercise. And then this is where I turned to the Dementia Matters podcast and heard Nate interview. Nate, is it Julian or Julian, Gaitan?
He goes by Max.
It's neither. It's Max. Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess if I'd listened more closely to that podcast, I would have picked up on that. Thank you, Max. I also misspelled, I'm realizing now I misspelled Ozioma's first name, so I'm striking out with names today. So Ozioma, it's O-Z-I-O-M-A, not O-A, Okonkwo. And colleagues have, this is based on a publication they had last year in a journal called Frontiers in Endocrinology. Nate, feel free to jump in since you did the interview, but as best as we can tell, again, from some more what we call observational studies, where we look at folks and try to correlate, well, what is exercise linked to? It seems like people who exercise more or have better fitness have less amyloid in their brain. That's the protein that is associated with Alzheimer's disease. Their hippocampus or hippocampi, which are the parts of the brain that have to do with memory, are larger, and overall brain volume is bigger. There's better blood flow to the brain, better memory and executive function. And then there are studies now underway, including the REACH study, which Dr. Okonkwo and Max were involved in, of actually assigning people to exercise vigorously or not vigorously and see if there's any difference. And what I found in the paper was that there are some biomarkers that get better, some exercise-related biomarkers. Nate, what I recall from the podcast is that they found some improvement in brain function as well, but I couldn't find the paper that cited that. So Nate, I don't know, do you have any more info about what the REACH study is teaching us?
Well, they're using really fancy technology called glucose PET scans or FDG PET scans. And what that does is that the glucose goes into the brain, and the healthier your brain cells are, the higher their metabolism, which kind of makes sense for the rest of our body too. And so those that were in the exercise arm of the trial, they found more metabolism, more signal in this PET scan, not only in the front of our brain, which is a really important part of the brain that helps with planning and organizing and our motivation, but throughout the brain, including parts of memory, just meaning that those that were exercising just had improvements in the health of the cells or the metabolism of the brain cells throughout the brain, but in really important areas too. Really speaking to that's a biological connection, speaking to the benefits of aerobic activity.
Thank you so much, Nate. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I appreciate your expertise in this area. So, to kind of recap, there are guidelines out there for the amount and type of exercise we should all be doing. There are benefits with respect to mood and emotional function. And as best as we can tell, it looks like there are benefits with respect to brain function and memory and of cognition as well. I want to add, no one wants to fall down the stairs or fall, period. And I got to say, as a person who works in geriatrics, even though I'm on the mental health side of things, what I have seen sort of be among the greatest barriers or causes of problems with well-being is when people start to fall and they get injured, and then start to doubt themselves around their ability to get up and around, and have, of course, all the physical and other consequences of a fall and a bone break and all the rest of it. And, then potentially having impacts on independence and quality of life. So hopefully the staircase is a scare tactic around exercising more as a way of lowering the risk of falls. And I will add, so I treat people who have a specific phobia called the fear of falling. So it typically arises after people have fallen or if they've had a near miss. And so there are other specific phobias, like the most common specific phobia is spiders. And there are others, blood and, various other things. But they're kind of fairly unique to folks over 65 is the specific phobia of falling. Antidepressants don't work. Psychotherapy doesn't work. it's physical therapy that works. If someone comes to me with the specific phobia that they're going to fall, I refer them to physical therapy. So it's sort of further reinforcing that, the critical importance of exercise and activity in a variety of domains, including reducing the risk of falling. And paradoxically, people who fall and then are afraid of falling again, they don't walk. So that actually makes it even worse. Then you deteriorate even further. So you want to break people out of that cycle. The mental health way of thinking about it is you're afraid of something, you avoid it, and then that actually makes it worse by avoiding that thing. What you want to do is expose people to the thing that they're afraid of. So, for some reason, you really need to work with spiders, like you decided to take up, clearing out bugs as your job, you would need to get some exposure therapy. Or, if you need to fly or whatever, that's exposure. So physical therapy is, in a way, exposure to the fear of falling and getting people confident in their walking again.
Art, could I add something then too?
Yeah, please.
So one of the things that I'll say to my patients is that when you exercise, you also release your natural endorphins, which can help you feel good, but also releases some of the tension and stress from just chronic daily stress that people experience. And so that's why I will always promote aerobic activity. However, I think one of the important things you mentioned, Art, is the value of strength activities like weightlifting or something that's muscle building. And that's because in your 50s, we start to lose up to 1% of our skeletal muscle each year as we get older. And that's what leads to frailty and decreased function. But we can combat that with exercise or with strength training in particular. So when people do muscle strengthening and they lift weights or they do yoga, those things actually combat what is a natural process of slowly losing some of that muscle mass. And then that is sort of protective for falling, for the fear of falling, and keeping a person as functional as possible, which I do think leads to good quality of life.
Thank you very much, Nate. Yeah, it's interesting. I was in this exercise domain. I was mostly thinking about cardio, but I was curious. It was interesting. It was eye-opening to me. The CDC sort of on equal footing has the muscle strengthening. So thank you, Nate, for emphasizing that point. I did see there was some stuff in the chat. Did that get addressed in the chat, or is that something we should talk about here?
We covered it.
Okay,
Art.
great. Thank you so much. I thought I would couple exercise with sleep. I don't exactly know how those two fit. I guess they fit a little bit in that if you have more exercise during the day, you'll sleep better. But I thought I would just spend a few minutes talking about promoting good sleep. As a psychiatrist, one of the most common concerns people come to me with is that they're not sleeping well. And especially people over 65, because we know for a lot of folks, sleep quality, sleep quantity goes down as you get older. And certainly the perception that one is not sleeping well also goes up for a lot of people as they get older. And a lot of what I do in my practice is counseling people on healthy habits with respect to sleep. And actually trying at all costs to avoid medications for sleep because of all the challenges associated with medications. We'll get to that later. We'll cover that when we can talk about alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, and medications. But especially for people over 65, changing health habits, and there's a specific type of psychotherapy called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, are both much safer than medications are for insomnia and have more long-lasting effects. And we've all felt it. If you've had a good night's rest, you feel pretty good the next day. If you haven't slept well, you can feel crummy, and that affects your memory, that affects fatigue, it affects your mood. People are more irritable when they haven't slept well. It affects your decision making. People are more impulsive when they're sleep deprived. So Sleep is absolutely essential to good well-being. So on this slide and the next, I'm just going to go over some of the healthy habits tips. I have a one-page printout that I just hand out to folks when I want to talk with them about promoting good sleep. So here's the link to exercise. So ideally, one would exercise daily, either the stretching or the cardio exercise, and probably not too late in the day so that adrenaline surge that comes with exercise isn't interfering with sleep. I will add too, I forgot to include this today, but I'm a big fan of light and light exposure, and probably one of my favorite treatments for depression in people over 65 is bright light therapy. So having people sit in front of a bright light for 30 minutes or go outside. Even on the darkest, cloudiest day, there's way more light outside than there is inside, unless you have a light box that you sit in front of. So I like to couple those things. I recommend people go outside and do a 30-minute brisk walk. So you're getting both things. You're getting the benefits of exercise. You're getting the circadian rhythm benefits as well. So our daily rhythms are regulated by light in the morning and melatonin in the evening. So that signal that we've evolved over millions of years of mammalian evolution to say light equals time to be active, we're mammals. That affects us as well. So getting that light exposure in the morning is critical for getting the day going. And getting us on a good circadian rhythm, and then our brains release melatonin in the evening as the signal of, okay, it's time to start shutting down for the night. So exercise can, in addition to all the benefits we talked about, can help promote good sleep. Napping. One of my favorite interventions is to recommend people nap, but I think there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. So the right way is it should be brief and it should be in the early afternoon. So the reason for that is that if you do it too late or too long, that's going to begin to rob from your nighttime sleep requirement. So if you take a nap at 5 p.m. for 2 hours, it's going to be very difficult to get a good night's rest. Either you'll be able to fall asleep again, but then you'll wake up at 3 in the morning, or you'll have a tough time getting to sleep again. So early in the day and not too long, no more than an hour. That can be nice and restorative. So what I tell people is eat lunch, 1 to 2 o'clock, take a nap. And people will get sort of a little recharge for the afternoon. Makes it easier to do afternoon activities if you've had that nap. And then you can head into your evening routine and hopefully get a good night's rest. Speaking of routine, it's good to try to be as regular in your rhythm as possible. So picking a time, okay, 10 o'clock, that's my target. I want to be in bed by 10 o'clock each night and kind of sticking with that. That's part of training your body. Here's the routine we're going to have with respect to sleep. Similarly, only going to bed when you're tired. We're going to have this on the next slide as well. Using your bed for 2 things, sleep and sex and nothing else. Not watching TV, not laptop, not reading, not snacking on peanuts, not, whatever it is. Sex and sleep, and that's it. That's really what the bed should be for. And that's part of training. It's really retraining your body. It's saying, aha, bed. That equals the place that I go to sleep, not the place where I play Wordle till 1 in the morning. So it's retraining your body to equate. It's conditions. It's Pavlovian condition, classical conditioning. You're linking the bed to sleep. A variety of don't do things. So don't smoke after dinner. Ideally don't smoke, but if you're going to smoke, don't smoke after dinner. Don't drink caffeine after noon, and don't drink alcohol after dinner, at dinner or later. So people have a misconception about alcohol and sleep. It is sedating, but it does not promote good sleep quality. It promotes a type of sleep that is not restorative. So alcohol may make you sleepy, but it actually doesn't result in good sleep. Other kind of tips related to sleep: keeping fluids to a minimum after dinner, and then going to the bathroom right before bedtime. Again, I already mentioned bed should equal sleep and sex and nothing else. Turn off all your devices. Find a comfortable temperature for your room. This is going to vary, and this can be tricky if bed partners have different temperatures that they're comfortable with. So that can get a little complicated, but typically cool and dark. The specific temperature will vary from person to person. But like if you're under a bunch of covers or, heating blanket or whatever, that can actually make it a little difficult to sleep. Part of your circadian rhythm is your body cools off. After that's part of the melatonin signaling in the evening time. Also, like a hot shower at nighttime is not great for that reason as well. And then critically, this goes back to the Pavlovian conditioning. If you're laid in bed for 20 minutes and you're not asleep, go do something else. Specifically, go to another room if you can. And what I recommend is read a book, a little bit of light, not too much light, listen to music. Don't go to another room and surf the web and read about the latest, craziness in Washington or whatever, because that's just going to activate you. You want to do something nice and calm and settling. And then when your eyes get heavy again, then go back to bed and repeat. If after 20 minutes you're not asleep, then repeat the cycle again, because again, you want to retrain your body to equate bed with sleep. So all these things are much, much safer than any medications for sleep, and more durable. If you take a medicine to help you sleep, it helps you that night. If you learn these techniques, that helps you from here on out with promoting good sleep quality. So I think I'll pause here. Is there anything in the chat I should be minding to, or do anyone else want to add anything about exercise and sleep?
Art, I'd like to second the suggestion of not having caffeine after 12 p.m. I was reading that some people, because our physiology is different per person, but it could take up to 8 hours to fully process caffeine. And just as an example, yesterday I had leftover green tea because my clinic was very busy, and so I didn't get to drink it. And I stupidly drank the rest of my green tea at 4 p.m. and I had a really hard time falling asleep, and I blame that completely. So
that's a great example. Yeah, that such a good point. And there's a great general point there as well. Everybody's different. And so, a lot of these recommendations will vary a lot from person to person. And so, someone can drink coffee right up to bedtime and it doesn't bother them, but someone may have these much more long lasting effects of the caffeine. So thank you for sharing that, Nate.
And I'll put in a book suggestion for people. Matt Shepard, I believe is his last name. He's sort of the scientist guru on sleep. Matt Walker, and he has a great book that's out that I have read and have tried to adopt his suggestions on sleep techniques. But he's shown in his studies, both I think on the East Coast at Harvard and then on the West Coast, I want to say UCSF, the correlation or the relationship between sleep and cognition and sleep and mood. And for anyone who has that masterclass series online, he's also one of a very popular speaker there too.
Thank you for sharing that, Nate. So my watch just told me I've been sitting for 50 minutes and I have 3 minutes left in the hour to get my credit for standing. And so we've all been sitting here for 57 minutes. So it is time for a stretch break. So we're going to take a 1-minute break. I've got some suggestions here, but you can do whatever you want over this minute. So you can walk in place, step side to side, reach both arms up and down, roll your shoulders forward and backward, alternately lift left and right knees up and down, roll your head in a half circle left and right. Do whatever you want, so long as it's comfortable, and you can adapt this to something that works for your body. So I'm gonna set my timer for 1 minute, and then we will reconvene in 1 minute after we've stretched, and I'm going to stand up and stretch. Okay, well, I hope you all enjoyed your 1 minute stretch break. Siri did not, she didn't give me credit, so I'm not gonna get, oh wait, did I get it? Oh, I got it. Yes, I got my hour. Okay, great. Okay, super. Okay, let me move on to kind of things to avoid or to reduce as ways of promoting well-being. So I'm going to talk about alcohol, smoking, tobacco, marijuana, and medications. So let me just start with alcohol. And I think this is one of the places where I have a lot of discussions with patients about their alcohol consumption. And, it's tricky because, there's a social aspect to alcohol use. There's just habit. People when they come home from work or at dinner or at bedtime or whatever, are just kind of used to having a drink. But alcohol is a psychoactive compound and it's a neurotoxin. I mean, it like literally kills brain cells, neurons. And so I think, especially in the context of emotional well-being and cognition, there are some challenges related to alcohol use. So I just wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit. So the guidelines nationally for people over 65 and up are to have no more than 7 standard drinks in a week. And the next slide, I'll have what a standard drink is. So that I think they say no more than 2 drinks at a time, although what I would recommend, Julie, no more than 1 drink at a time. So kind of averaging that 7 over 7 days, with a big caveat that if folks have a variety of health conditions, and I would say memory loss is among them, but also falls, chronic pain, liver disease, history of bleeding in the gut, variety of different things, this maximum doesn't apply. It's lower, or it really kind of ought to be 0. Or for folks who are on medications where the alcohol could interact with that medication. And so that's true of a lot of the psychotropic medications like anti-anxiety medications, antidepressants, but it's also true of things like narcotics, pain relievers, Tylenol, et cetera. So, if you're in doubt, this is something to talk with your clinician or pharmacist about, could any of these medications interact with alcohol? Sometimes it'll say like on the bottle, like, do not use with alcohol or use with caution with alcohol. So I would view the 7 drinks a week as just kind of a general kind of maximum, and then really lower than that if any of these other conditions apply. And so here are the definitions. So a standard drink in the US is, a typical beer is like 4 to 5%. So that's 12 ounces. Now note, if you're a craft beer drinker, it could be a lot more. So like, it could be more like 8, 9. There are some beers that are 12%. So bear that in mind. So that gets you closer to wine in terms of the strength. And so you would have to adjust accordingly. So a can of beer, 12 ounces is a standard drink. A standard pour of wine is 5 ounces. So that would be 1 standard drink. And then here are specific examples for fortified wines and cordials and brandy and cognac. And then for hard alcohol, so that tends to be 40%. So like whiskey or vodka or gin typically is 40% or 80 proof. And so that would be 1.5 ounces. And I've seen pours that are much bigger than that. So just, be mindful of that really it's just, it's not, fill the glass halfway up with gin and the other half with tonic. That, that could be like 2 to 3 drinks, standard drinks, right there. So in terms of, I guess I don't have a slide on this, but just in general, the health concerns with alcohol would be, and I mentioned the neurotoxin component. So kills brain cells. We're all losing brain cells. poof, as we speak, I probably just lost another 100 brain cells. So alcohol only accelerates that process. If you have neuropathy, difficulty with sensation or pain in hands or feet or whatever, alcohol worsens that as well. Alcohol increases the risk of falls. We talked about that already earlier. Generally, alcohol, the analogy I use with my patients who are depressed is, alcohol is a depressant. It slows down the brain. And I'm prescribing an antidepressant. It doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense to be taking both a depressant and an antidepressant at the same time. So for depression, for anxiety, alcohol does have some like acute anti-anxiety effects. So a person who's shy or socially phobic, fearful in a crowd may drink a little. They're getting that anti-anxiety effect. They loosen up a little bit. They can have a better time. But guess what? That alcohol leaves your system, and then you're right back to where you started, or worse if you're drinking on a regular basis. So anyway, so I think there are the pandemic. So we do know alcohol use has surged during the pandemic, and I'm not sure we fully understand the reasons why, but stress related to the pandemic could be part of it. People just being at home alone more and they turn to the liquor cabinet, maybe that's part of it. But we have seen both in people who are 65 and younger adults, just a lot more drinking. And I think if you're drinking within those healthy guidelines, that's one thing. But if it's more than that, then that could be certainly both a well-being issue and a cognition issue. Or I wonder if you should move to a higher level of care. But the reducing, because it's just, it's really woven into Wisconsin culture a lot, and B, it's just when you're younger and you have that drink when you get back home from work, and then the drink at dinner, the drink at bedtime, that may not be problematic, but as you get older, that ability to metabolize alcohol, your liver function goes down, your kidney function goes down. The way alcohol works is by, affecting neurotransmitters and neurons. You have fewer neurons as you get older. Anyway, I feel like I'm preaching now, so I'm going to stop on the alcohol side of things. And if folks have questions about the alcohol side of things, I'll just I'll put that in the chat or unmute and bring that up now. Okay, well, let me move on to smoking. So this is probably less controversial. We've all known for, approximately 18 billion years, the negative effects of tobacco on all different kinds of measures, heart health, brain health, negative effects on mood, lung health, obviously. So, and really the bottom line here is it's never too late to quit smoking. And in fact, I teach a lot of residents, medical students, psychiatrists. Probably, I think about like all the things I can do as a psychiatrist. The single most powerful intervention is if I could help someone quit smoking. If you think about all the different downstream effects of smoking, probably more powerful than any psychotherapy or antidepressant or light therapy or anything else is if I can help someone quit smoking, that is going to have marked impact on their physical health, their brain health, their emotional well-being. So I won't say a lot about this. There are lots of great resources out there. There's the Wisconsin Tobacco Quit Line, which is a 24/7 service that's available. There are great medications to help people quit smoking. There's nicotine replacement. There are other treatments out there. So if you are smoking and interested in quitting smoking, talk with your healthcare provider about that, because there are very effective tools out there. And it's hard to quit smoking. Nicotine is one of the most addictive substances we have. And so a mantra in the addiction world is relapse is part of recovery, and that is true of addictions of nicotine as well, that it may take 12 tries before someone can successfully quit, but it's that 12th try that matters. Then the person has quit, and now they're going to start getting all the health benefits, which accrue very rapidly after you quit smoking. Oh, and thank you, Bonnie. Okay, of course Nate has covered this. What hasn't Nate covered? Nate, do you want to add anything based on the Dementia Matters podcast on smoking?
Well, thanks, Art. The podcast is with Dr. Adrienne Johnson, who's one of our psychologists at UW and an active researcher within the program. And I think one of the things, she gives really helpful tips on smoking cessation. And she said the same thing you did, that it takes multiple attempts for most people, and that's okay. And we need to know that at the onset. But she also said that when it comes to the body's response to smoking cessation, one example was that within an hour of smoking cessation, the body's blood pressure goes down by like 2 points. And then within a day, something changes. Within 5 years, your heart doesn't even know that you ever smoked. And then the brain's a bit longer, which makes sense within I want to say it was like 10 years. But when people quit, and some time has elapsed, the body can recover from what has happened. And so it's just a remarkable thing. And the podcast, she goes over some specific examples, and she's been on this Healthy Living MCI series too. So she's spoken to that, but I completely agree. I think as soon as a person quits, the benefits already start accumulating.
Thank you so much, Nate.
And I can say, as a former smoker, hopefully that will be the last time I will have quit. I look forward to when I hit one of those benchmarks of like the number of years I'm on. I don't know the actual date of when I quit, because I've quit so many times, right? But I'm hitting 7 years sometime this spring, and it's like, yeah, okay, my body's like, should be really loving me now. Just to right, like hearing those things helps reinforce the decisions I make around smoking.
Bonnie, thank you for that testimonial, and congratulations on the 7 years. That's fantastic. So you've got all those heart benefits, and you're closing in on all those brain benefits as well.
Yeah, pretty soon it'll be like I was almost not a smoker if I keep it up. I mean, it should work out.
That's awesome.
Add a few years onto my life.
Okay. There's something else people smoke or take in other forms, and that's marijuana or cannabis. So we're doing maybe grand's not the right word. We're doing a very large natural experiment in the United States and elsewhere on what happens when a lot more people start smoking pot or using cannabis in other forms. So I don't know. I mean, we will find out over time. But what we do know is that many, many more people now than in the past are using THC and CBD in various forms, and that includes people over 65. So actually really a dramatic increase in CBD and THC products. And I want to be careful to not conflate those two, although those overlap in how those are delivered. So I'll talk about that in a moment. There's intense interest in understanding the endocannabinoid system within the brain. So the endocannabinoid system is basically kind of the brain's physiological natural version. There are endocannabinoid receptors, and that is how THC is thought to have its psycho effect within the brain. But then the brain produces its own proteins that bind those endocannabinoid receptors. So this is a huge area of interest, because if we could safely harness positive effects of acting on the endocannabinoid receptor without the negative effects, that would be spectacular. And in fact, in my sort of area of work, which has to do with behavioral and psychological symptoms of dementia, like agitation, hallucinations, depression, and so on. There is study underway both of endocannabinoid receptor agonists, so those are medications that act at endocannabinoid receptors, and CBD with respect to, can you actually treat agitation, depression, anxiety, and so on in people with dementia. So we don't know, but that is being studied. There's intense interest, of course, in CBD. Again, the verdict is out there. The reason I was kind of hedging a little bit about CBD versus THC is many CBD products have THC in them, and many things that are touted as THC have actually very little THC and a lot of CBD. And again, THC is the psychoactive part of, one of the psychoactive parts of marijuana that impacts the brain, and CBD less so. So it's a little wild, wild west out there in terms of like what you're actually getting. And in fact, if you go, I mean, the other thing we know now is marijuana now is very different from the marijuana that folks smoked in the 60s and 70s. It is far, and 80s and 90s, it is far more potent now. So sort of the doses of THC that people are getting, both from smoked marijuana and even things like, marijuana brownies and things like that, there are incredible amounts of THC, 10, 100 times higher than what it was in the past. So I guess what I would say here, this is very much a buyer beware kind of thing. You may not really know what you're getting, and we don't really know. We do know from study. Here's what we do know about cannabis and its effects on the brain. Two different things we know. One is people who smoke pot heavily, which now, given the potency of pot, may not be all that heavy use. There are clear effects on memory, on attention, on motivation. So actually the most common behavioral and psychological symptom of dementia is apathy, which is a lack of interest and motivation. So someone who's got apathy, cannabis would not be a terribly good idea. That would worsen things. And we also know there's an increasing literature, this is from the other end of the age spectrum, but may have impact here, is that young people who smoke pot are at higher risk of developing schizophrenia. And the theory is that there's probably a subset. So schizophrenia is a very severe form of mental illness, affects about 0.5 to 1% of people worldwide. Has, even though it affects 0.5 to 1% of people worldwide, it accounts for about 4 to 5% of the disability worldwide because it's a devastating disease. So some people are at higher risk of developing schizophrenia than others. Cannabis increases the risk further. So in people who are not at risk of developing schizophrenia, it's probably not going to cause schizophrenia. But in people who are at risk, it could be that final hit that kind of brings on the schizophrenia, makes it come on earlier or makes it come on period. So that's going back to that natural experiment thing. That is a great source of concern because, there are lots of illnesses you don't want to get, and schizophrenia is one of them. And if there's a thing out there that people are using regularly that is going to increase the risk of schizophrenia, that's bad. Now, how does that apply to people in their 60s and 70s at risk of Alzheimer's? Unclear. But certainly in clinical practice, we've seen people who get psychotic with cannabis use. So my bottom line personally, as a psychiatrist who's seen the negative effects of this, is promoting both cognition and well-being in people who are 65. I personally would recommend steering clear until we have a much, much better understanding of how these things actually work and what are the pros and cons of both CBD and THC. And Kathy brings up more studies. Absolutely, we definitely need more kind of rigorous, well-designed studies with amounts of THC and CBD that are well characterized. So we know sort of exactly what people are getting, and we know the effects. Now, there are FDA approved usages. So there's one particular form of CBD that is used for a very rare form of seizures. There's in hospice settings, it can be used for appetite stimulation, and actually, I don't know the full details of how Marinol is used. Maybe Nate, you can help me out on that. So there are some, and of course there's medical marijuana as well, but the literature beyond a couple of very narrow areas is really quite poor. Okay. And the last thing I'll say as substances is our medications are substances too. And it's not just the things that Dr. Chin and I prescribe. It's all the supplements. It's all the, the things that we buy on Amazon. It's the Prevagen that's advertised at 1 a.m, which, by the way, is snake oil. It's completely useless. And I'd be happy to go into why Prevagen is completely useless if folks want to know. All the sort of the latest remedies, they are things we put into our body. And so they have risks and benefits just like everything else. And so I would suggest, well, just to give some specific examples, medications, including over-the-counter medications that affect a brain system called acetylcholine, which is important for memory and attention, are bad for memory and attention. So over-the-counter sleep remedies have antihistamines in them, which are anticholinergic. And so they're bad for memory and bad in other ways as well. Lots of medications that we prescribe are anticholinergic as well. Opiate medications have negative effects on mood. People who are on opiates long-term can actually, they have a higher rate of depression. Now, some of that could be the chronic pain that they're experiencing, which is the reason for being on opiates, but opiates themselves have negative effects on mood. And so on. So I would suggest a kind of periodic check with your healthcare provider about not just the prescribed medications, but sort of everything, all the supplements, all the herbals, all the complementary, not to say that they're bad, but just to think through what are the pros and cons of these things, and also what are the interactions these things interact in, St. John's wort. So St. John's wort is approved in multiple countries for the treatment of depression. It is an antidepressant. It's something called an MAO inhibitor. We have MAO inhibitors. We don't use them a lot because they're very difficult to use and they have lots of drug-drug interactions. So St. John's wort is an antidepressant and interacts with other antidepressants. And so it could be dangerous to be both on, say, sertraline, an antidepressant that I can prescribe, and St. John's wort, which is an antidepressant that a person can get over the counter without a prescription. So again, not any value judgment on any of this, but just recognizing the potential for negative effects on cognition and on mental health and on well-being from various medications and their interactions.
So Dr. Walaszek, one thing I think I'm hearing you saying is, say I'm having problem sleeping at night, or, like my dad likes to take like a Tylenol or an aspirin before bed. We should stay away from those medications that say PM after them, because do those also contain that anticholinergic that we don't want people, that could affect someone's cognition?
That's exactly right. And if you're not sure, you can just go to the pharmacist and say, hey, is this a safe medication to take for sleep? Or is this the, if you want to sound fancy, you can say, is this an anticholinergic medication? And there are other meds like that too. There are a lot of common medications for urinary problems, which are very common as people get older, have anticholinergic effects. So you could ask that of the pharmacist or of your healthcare provider, is this medication going to be safe given my memory concerns?
And Art, as you said, the body changes, the organs are changing as they get older. And so is the person at the right dose? Is is this still effective? Should this be reduced? Should this be stopped? And so we call it medication reconciliation, which is a mouthful for just making sure these medications still have a purpose. And if they don't, then it's better to be off of them. And I would say in my clinic, where people are very thoughtful of, could this medication be harming me? One of the first ones that we tend to look at is gabapentin, which is being used for many different things off-label, meaning they weren't studied for that purpose, but people tend to try them. And people can get on really high doses, 3 to 4 times a day. And one of the things we do is just slowly start lowering the dose and always checking in with the person to see, well, are you noticing a difference? And more often than not, my patients have told me, no, I haven't noticed that it's been harmful going on a lower dose. And oftentimes we get people off of that medication or just even at a lower dose of that medication. And the term that I think is very common, which is a good one, is lowest effective dose. And so for the people, tuning in today, that's all we want. We want the lowest helpful dose for you, because more than that is more likely to cause problems than to help you.
Thank you so much, Nate. Such terrific points. And of course, there's a recording of Healthy Living with MCI, medications, vitamins. Perfect. That's great, Bonnie. Wonderful. Okay, so I felt like I was a scold there for about 20 minutes. So I'm gonna move back to the positive side. So that was this, like, don't do this. Now we're gonna go back to the let's do this to promote well-being. So I want to talk next about an active lifestyle. And this has been hard during the pandemic, right? So like so many of our usual outlets have been gone or limited because of the pandemic. And so, and because of necessary public health responses to the pandemic. So this has been a challenge. And this is where I've also seen the people losing their active lifestyle really having a major impact on their well-being. We are social creatures, and that interaction with other folks, that cognitive and social stimulation you get is really necessary, and then we can miss it immensely when it's not there. So the National Institute on Aging, or NIA, has terrific public educational materials. I just borrow this directly from their website. So they've got lots of great ideas there, a variety of lifestyles. So they listed the following benefits: less likely to develop some chronic health problems, increased lifespan, increased happiness, and less depression. So that's a good thing. Being better prepared to cope with loss. So that's very interesting. There's a whole literature about how do people respond to stressors, and are there good ways and are there less good ways to do it? And basically active response to stressors, like getting engaged and being active, or doing altruistic things like volunteering and so on, are better in the long run than other strategies like avoidance, I'm not going to worry about that, I'll deal with that 2 years from now. So those sort of active, engaging kind of responses to stress are really more helpful in the long run. And those are learnable. If you don't have those coping skills, we can teach those. We in the mental health field can teach you how to get those skills. And then may also have an impact on memory and problem solving. So we're going to get interactive again here. We're going to do a little whiteboard exercise. So all that means is I'm going to get your ideas and I'm going to jot them down here. So again, the NIA website gave categories of activities to consider. And actually in the chat at the beginning, we already had a lot of great ideas there, like the piano playing and so on. So their categories, just to give you some prompts, are to get out and about, learn something new, like learning the piano, become more active in your community, be physically active, which we've talked about, and then finding the right balance, meaning that, we probably can't just sign up for 17 different things at once. We'll have to, gradually reintroduce activities one at at a time. So now I'm going to stop sharing so that, so can folks still see this so that I can type on here? Is that visible to people when I type here? Yeah, okay, great. Okay, well, feel free to so think about, oh, I guess I haven't asked you what to do. Share, that would be helpful. Share, an activity that you've picked up over the course of the pandemic to, as a way of kind of engaging. And so this could be a social activity, it could be a physical activity, but something that gets you out and about and more active. To the extent that you feel comfortable sharing, unmute or put it in the chat.
Dr. Walaszek, Ginny has shared hiking the state and county parks.
Oh, great. Do you have a favorite?
What's your favorite state or county park, Ginny?
Or others can share their favorites too.
I don't know. Yeah. I found Lion's Den Gorge during this pandemic, which is in Grafton. And it has beautiful views of Lake Michigan.
Thank you. I've not heard of that one. Yeah, we're fortunate. Wisconsin is a beautiful state, and we have just an incredible bounty of nature and a terrific state and county park system, and other folks too, like the Nature Conservancy buys up land. There's the Wisconsin Natural Resources Foundation, which has land and has field trips to that land as well. So they'll like, if you go to their various websites, they'll tell you about things like accessibility, like how accessible are the trails, how difficult are they for hiking or for biking or for cross-country skiing or what. So it's really, we are very, very fortunate to have such great parks. So Ginny, thank you for sharing.
He said anywhere in the Kettles is what she likes. I don't know where that is, Ginny. Molly has shared walking and talking with neighbors along the way.
I love that. A lot of the theme today has been like things that cover various domains. So like, walking with other people. So you're getting physical activity, you're getting some outdoor time, you're getting social engagement, the sort of conversation that goes along with that. So you're hitting multiple domains at the same time. If you could somehow prepare sushi at the same time, that would be like, you'd have everything. And maybe do a mindfulness exercise. So you'd have it all covered.
Kathy shared walking in the domes or in a greenhouse when it gets cold outside.
What are the domes? Is that the botanical garden in Milwaukee?
Yeah,
the domes?
in Milwaukee, yeah.
Yeah.
James has shared that we have planned walks with a couple friends in new areas near our home. Magnolia Bluffs Park. I actually did that on the first year of the pandemic, Walk Anywhere for the Walks to End Alzheimer's. Magnolia Park was one of my new places. Also, he will be volunteering for a local community garden this summer with neighbors.
What great examples. Thank you. So volunteering, it's so, the volunteering took a big hit during the pandemic because so many activities were shut down and there were restrictions related to, you all know. So that was a big loss for people so volunteering hits multiple things again. So often these are social activities. It's an altruistic activity. So altruism is one of the most positive ways to respond to stress. Something bad happens, you convert that into, I'm going to help other people. And it helps with that sense of mastery and self-efficacy that we've been talking about as well. So it really hits multiple domains. And two, the outside, the greenery, there's all kinds of interesting literature about how important green spaces are to mental health. And so, just the presence of some greenery can be really helpful. We've, in some of our well-being space, we have like large paintings of forests, or like the whole wall is like, looks like a forest scene and so on. So it's not quite as good as being out in a forest, but it's a way of bringing that in, or just even having plants. So planting and gardening really took off as well. Both of my daughters are just obsessed with plants, and they have all plants all over the place and know all the details about the plants. So that's that greenery is really important.
Molly shared that she learn a new language.
Mm-hmm. What did you learn, Molly?
Well, I'm not really learning it, but my mom is starting to learn some Spanish. So dabbling in that a little bit.
Thank you. And earlier we heard the example. Oh, actually, I'm going to share. I'm sorry. I've been on and off trying to study Japanese for years. I went to Japan 5 years ago, and it's off again now. But it is remarkably cognitively stimulating. It's also a little bit humbling. Like, it's much harder to learn a new language at age 49 than it is at age 19, for example. Actually, I have another example of that. I speak Polish, and I went to Polish language school. I've forgotten most of it now. And my daughter, when she was like 13, she was like picking up new words like that, and I have to keep looking them up. Anyway, it took more trials, but I was able to learn some of it. So great example about learning a language, Molly.
Kathy shared, on great days, I watch the sunset on Florida beach webcams.
I love the webcam idea. Oh, that's so brilliant. There's so many great webcams out there. They're the ones that like are focused on eagles' nests, and you can watch the eagles, raising their children. There are northern lights, so you can see the aurora. There are all kinds of great webcams to bring us closer to. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, we watched the webcam for Stonehenge at the equinox, when you can, or I can't remember if it's the equinox or the solstice now. You can see, the sunrise like lines up perfectly with the monoliths of Stonehenge, and so we were part of a worldwide viewing party to see that. So yeah, that's a great example.
One of the things I have done during the pandemic is my friend and I started to compare TV shows and recommend shows. So not good, right? Just a lot of sitting. And one of these shows inspired us to look up adventure racing. And so we tried on adventure racing. And it was me and two of my coworkers at the research center, and my 65-year-old mother are on this team. And we get together and we practice riding our bike and canoeing. And I'm somebody that likes to be physically active, but not because it's good for me. Like, I need a purpose. So like, oh, I want to do well at this race. And we also had to learn about navigation and using a compass. So there's just like a lot of new skills or refining skills I thought I had, or which was really fun.
Well, thank you. I'm going to try some of these out. So you're tapping the wisdom of the crowd here. Lots of great suggestions for activities. So if you go to this website, I'll put it in the chat so then you can just kind of easily link to it. There are lots of, those are the categories, but also had lots of great specific examples on there to consider. So okay, we're on the home stretch here. I want to get us towards meaning and purpose. And we've been sort of hinting at that a little bit, but I want to get us closer to that and kind of close with that. And the stepping stone we'll take to get there is to talk about mindfulness. And I think we've touched on this already a little bit, but there's more and more literature over time about the mental health benefits of mindfulness. And I'll just start with just a very simple definition. Mindfulness means lots of different things to lots of different folks. I just picked kind of a very simple one, the practice of awareness and living in the present moment without judgment. And so that without judgment part is really critical. It's very hard to do, is to be aware of what's going on and living in the now without that voice saying you're wasting time, or boy, that was a dumb thought, Art, or Art, this is a really terrible talk, it's going poorly, you're wasting everybody's time. So those, that's a lot of judgment, right? So mindfulness is about carving out a time and a space away from that judgment, away from that critical voice, away from, it doesn't even have to be critical. It's moving away, it's moving towards noticing and being aware of, like, oh, I'm a little bit hungry right now, or I've got, this very slight headache in my left temple. So, what is that about? And sort of exploring it with curiosity rather than, oh, that headache means this sucks and everyone hates your talk and you're going to get terrible reviews. So anyway, that's a bit of a caricature of mindfulness, but just to walk our way into this a little bit, there's also good research about mindfulness and cognition. This is cross-sectional, it's observational, meaning we don't quite know yet if you randomized a bunch of people with memory loss to mindfulness versus not, how would that turn out? But if you look at baseline, how mindful people are, it is linked to better, to having more physical activity, more social engagement, better behavior and mood. And then in turn, the physical activity, social engagement is linked to better cognition, so better memory function, in other words. Because it's observational, it's hard for us to sort out, like, well, which way do these things go? Is it that you have more physical activities, so that makes you more mindful? Is it you're more mindful, so you engage better in social interactions? Unclear. That's something that we'll be able to tease out over time. And the thought is that mindfulness is something that people can actually be trained in, they can learn. And so you could increase your baseline. I mean, just like any skill, whether it's piano or Spanish or making sushi, mindfulness is a skill that one can acquire. There's also literature. So mindfulness itself has been baked into various forms of psychotherapy. There's something called mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR. That's based on the work of John Kabat-Zinn. You may have heard of it, big mindfulness guru. And then there's something called mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. And so in older adults, people who are 65, it has been linked with decreasing stress, with decreasing depression and anxiety, and improving sleep quality. Very hard to do these studies, but there is some evidence that it can be helpful. Okay, so we're gonna, Bonnie, I don't know how I'm doing on time here, but I'm gonna forge ahead if that's okay with you, unless you tell me, how are we doing on time?
Nope, you are just fine. You're doing great.
Okay.
And then I did put in the chat the link to how to start with mindfulness, what it is, what are the benefits from the Dementia Matters podcast.
Yeah, great. Okay, so we're gonna do it. We're gonna do a 1 minute mindfulness, essentially a little shorter. I think it's like 50 seconds mindfulness. So here's what, I'm just gonna set this up for you. Here's what we'll do. I'm gonna click over to a video of someone narrating a mindfulness meditation. There's a little bit of setup that's involved. So first, if you're standing, I'd ask you to sit. If you're already sitting, that's great. When you are sitting, find a posture that's comfortable. And typically what that means is having both feet planted in front of you, kind of your legs parallel in front of you. Having sort of equal distribution of your leg and buttocks in your chair, and your back in the chair as well. You put your hands in a place that is comfortable for you, whatever you like. So it can be in your lap, it can be on the desk in front of you, it can be crossed in front of you, whatever you find kind of most comfortable, so that your arms and hands are still and relaxed and not too tense. And so once you're sitting comfortably, we'll be able to go ahead with this exercise. So let me just switch.
So sitting comfortably.
Okay, so let me just do this. Okay, I'm going to press play and we're going to do a mindfulness meditation exercise together.
So sitting comfortably, just taking a big deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. As you breathe in, noticing how the body expands. As you breathe out, just watching the body soften as you gently close the eyes. And rather than the mind leading the breath, allow the breath to lead the mind. Notice the sensation of the breath. Notice it where you feel it in the body. If you need to, you can just gently place your hand on the stomach. And just following that rising and falling sensation. Nothing else to do. Allowing thoughts to come and go. And when you're ready, just gently opening the eyes again.
Okay, so obviously that was a very brief snippet. There's a whole lot more to the mindfulness world, but just to sort of draw out some of the key elements. So there's a lot of focus on breathing in mindfulness, sort of the idea that breathing is this natural rhythm that we also have control over. And so this is it. I'm not a terribly good meditator. I find my mind wandering off to places all the time, but a lot of the focus is on that kind of in and out of breathing and a shift over to noticing. So sort of the feeling of the breathing and the feeling of, your feet against the floor and so on. So there's lots of great stuff online, lots of great resources. The UW Department of Family Medicine has a ton of mindfulness meditation videos on their website. So nice, simple way to get into it. And then there are mindfulness groups out there. There are apps to promote mindfulness as well. So there are lots of ways to get into this. And the reason I wanted to spend a moment on this is because I think mindfulness can be part of the core of getting towards meaning and value and kind of doing stuff that gives us some sense of purpose, which is where I want to close today. I want to close with this model. The fancy term for this is acceptance and commitment therapy. It's a type of psychotherapy that we do with folks who have depression, anxiety, other conditions. And it's built around kind of this triangle of being present to what's going on with you right now. And so that's where mindfulness can come in. Being open to what's going on. So there are lots of things out there that we have no control over. There's a horrible war in the Ukraine right now. I'm doing my part, I think, by donating money to support the cause. But unfortunately, there's nothing personally otherwise that I can do to stop a madman from destroying another country. So there's some level of acceptance around that. And diffusion means sort of distancing from sort of the awful scenes that are there. My values are that, I value democracy. I value people being able to express themselves and not live in tyranny. So again, I do things that in that specific example of the Ukraine war, by donating, by promoting, talking about this publicly, by sharing on social media, things that are linked to my values. And so a lot of this work is around what gives you meaning and purpose in life, and doing things that get you closer. There's sort of in the therapy, there's kind of this model of a why. So you're moving along in life and you have a Y shape, you have a decision to make. You can do X or you can do Y. You can go left or you can go right. And the way you make a decision is which of these things is getting me closer to my values. You know, my values might be around family or religion or my spiritual beliefs or my community. So making decisions around things that get me closer to fulfilling my value. And I think that gets to where I want to close, which is, it has been incredibly difficult living through this pandemic. We've all had this horrible shared experience that none of us wanted. And it's been really difficult. It has had a major impact on well-being. It's had an impact on depression, anxiety, cognition, functioning, et cetera. The approach I'd suggest, and I'm in 5 minutes trying to explain a very complicated psychotherapy, but just to give you the basics, are the 3 steps of this ACT model are accepting your thoughts and feelings and being present to them. That's the mindfulness component. Choosing a value direction. So if you have to decide, am I going to go out to this meal or not? And I'm worried about, am I going to get COVID, or, how, are people going to be wearing masks and all that? I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer. It requires some reflection on what are my values, what's most important to me, and then making a decision that gets you closer to that, and then taking action. So in that case, if the most important thing is not getting sick, that may get you in one direction. If the most important thing is sharing a celebration with a loved one, that might get you in another direction. For example, there isn't a right or wrong answer. There's just, are you getting closer to your values or not? And I will close with my gratitude. So one of my favorite exercises over the course of the pandemic has been gratitude. So there are all kinds of ways of doing this. You can wake up each morning and think of 3 things that you are grateful for. Just sort of build that into your routine. So I'm going to close with my gratitude to Bonnie and to Jennifer and to Nate for putting this all together and for your facilitation. My gratitude to all of you. I mean, what a wonderful, for me, it's been a great experience. I don't know if you got anything out of this, but I learned a lot, and I very much enjoyed the sense of community that we were able to generate, even though this is all virtual. And I'm thankful for this beautiful field of sunflowers. This is Pope Farm Park, which is in Middleton, Wisconsin. Also happens to be the Ukrainian flag, this blue sky over yellow sunflowers. So consistent with my values of supporting my Ukrainian colleagues and cousins. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Art. Did you take that picture, Art?
I did take that picture. Yes. Yes. Thank you,
Awesome.
Fred.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Walaszek. We appreciate you spending the morning with us and sharing all these great things that we can do to try to implement or change our self-care. I know for me, I'm gonna try to pick one specific thing we've talked about and see if I can alter my behavior around that. I'm one of those people who's like, let's go big, let's just try to do it every day. And it's like, nah, let's reel it back, Bonnie, right? Like, let's just like try one day, we'll try to do something different. And the next week, let's try 2. So I encourage all of you to pick one thing you want to try to change or do differently, and see what type of effect that has on you. We do have some upcoming programs we want to share with you about. Jen, do you want to talk about living well with chronic conditions?
We have a program that we utilize curriculum that is out of Stanford University, and we partner with the Wisconsin Institute on Healthy Aging to offer this program called Living Well with Chronic Conditions. And it's a 7-week program, and it's a program that we like to connect folks who are living with a mild cognitive impairment or an early stage dementia of some sort to connect with us and learn some new strategies on how to continue to live well. So Dr. Walaszek, all of the things that you talked about today are incorporated in that 7-week workshop. And as Bonnie said, it's not about biting off more than you can chew. It's about using an action plan to really come up with a very defined activity that you would like to do to reach a goal. So we utilize action plans. We go over how to use a decision-making tool to make a decision on if you're at that fork in the road. How do I define what's important to me? And so this decision-making tool is a really great resource or tool actually that people can use to come to a decision. We talk about exercise and nutrition and mindfulness. We teach people all about different guided imagery exercises and distraction techniques and breathing exercises. It's really encompasses a lot of different things, all of which you talked about today. So for folks who are interested in learning more about that, please give me a call. Bonnie will be sending out information about that program. There is no cost to take part in that. And then we also have our spring session of that starting up on April 13th. And then we have 4 more presentations this year for healthy living with mild cognitive impairment. So that next program will take place on May 20th. So mark that on your calendar for the morning to spend with us again. And then there are the Dementia Matters podcast that Dr. Chin does. Those are offered twice a month, right, Dr. Chin? On all sorts of different topics. So there's tons of resources here that are really available to help all of you continue to live your best lives on all sorts of different topics. So Bonnie will also send out information on how to get connected to those podcasts. And then other ways to stay connected to us are through our e-newsletters. The Alzheimer's Disease Research Center has the website on where you can go to receive their newsletters. And then we also have information on how to connect to the Alzheimer's Association for our newsletters. And then lastly, we are accessible on social media through Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, both the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center and the Wisconsin chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. One of the things that was brought up a lot in our time today was different research studies that are going on through the ADRC. And Bonnie, would you just like to take a brief moment to tell people how they could connect to that research? Last month, I connected myself to the ADRC research opportunities. So there's all sorts of things available if you want to talk to that and the benefits of doing that.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jen. If you're interested in learning more about what research opportunities are available, I put a link to the form you can fill out. And if you fill out that form, myself or Kelsey will reach out to Kelsey's also on the program today. And we'll talk to you more about what's available, and we'll get some information from you so we can see what study you might qualify for. We're always looking forward for individuals with mild cognitive impairment to join our studies. And so if you are interested, please go ahead and reach out. There might be a study for you. We have caregiving studies, gut health, exercise, just anything you can think of in prevention. We've got probably a study, or we've had one, or we will be having one in the future related to those topics. Well, I did put a link to the survey for today's program in the chat. And as Jen said, I'll be sending out an email that will have everything we talked about today. I'll have a copy of the PowerPoint slides and then resources that we shared. So you can find all of that in the follow-up email. And we did record today's program. So after it is edited, we will have that available for you to be able to see or share with other people if you'd like them to get the information we talked about today. Dr. Chin, do you have any closing thoughts?
No, thank you, Bonnie and Jen, and Dr. Walaszek had to leave, but for those that are still on, we very much appreciate your presence today. We hope that you were able to take away some key points. The feedback's been wonderful, and thank you for putting in your comments in the chat function. And as was mentioned, we have 4 more of these for 2022, and so we'll be busy trying to bring in the best speakers we can and keep everyone engaged. But please do reach out, even if you have feedback for these sessions or you have topic ideas. We're always willing to hear those and try to incorporate those. But I hope you all have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.